Hello, my dear students. Today I am back to start a new chapter of history section, that is chapter number 2, New Kings and Kingdoms. Students, we all know, we have discussed in the previous chapter that Harshvardhan was a very powerful ruler in the northern region. An Asian period ends with the kingdom of Harsha, who lived from 590 CE to 647 CE. From the death of King Harshvardhan to 1200 CE, Rajput kings ruled North India. I can say after his death, a number of powerful kingdoms arose in the north, the Deccan, and the South India. Among them, the Rajputs took over northern and the western India. The word Rajput is derived from the Sanskrit word Rajputra, which means scion of the royal blood. After the death of Harsha in 647 CE, various Rajput clans established kingdom in different parts of India. The Rajput trace their pedigree far back into the past. Their three principal houses are the Suryavanshi, or the race of the sun, the Chandravanshi, or the race of the moon, and Agnikula, the race of fire god. Now, this particular point is not there in your lesson, but still it is only for your information. Some of the important Rajput rulers were Gurjara Pratiharas of Mandor, the Chauhans of Ajmer, the Parmaras of Malwa, the Chandelas of Bundelkhand. So, in this lesson, we are going to take each dynasty. We are going to discuss about all the dynasties of Rajput Khan. So, I am going to start with the Pratihara dynasty. The Pratiharas or the Gurjara Pratiharas, one of the prominent clans of Rajput, ruled from Gurjaradra in Jodhpur. In the 6th century CE, Harichandra laid the foundation of the Gurjara dynasty. Nagabhatta I was the first and prominent rulers of Pratiharas. In the 8th century, he ruled over Broch and Jodhpur and extended his dominion up to Gwalior. He repulsed the invasion of the Arabs of Sindh from the east and checked their expansion. He was succeeded by Vatsaraja, who desired to dominate the whole of North India. His attempt to control over Kannauj brought him into the conflict with the Pala ruler Dharmapala. Vatsaraja's successor Nagabhatta II and Rambhadra did not do anything impressively. Mihir Bhoja or Bhoja, son of Rambhadra, within a few years of his accession, succeeded in consolidating the power of Pratiharas. As a strong ruler, Bhoja was able to maintain peace in his kingdom. The Arab menace was firmly tackled by him. After Bhoja, the Pratihara Empire continued its full glory for nearly a century. Having successfully resisted the Arabs, the Pratiharas turned their attention towards the east, and by the end of millennium, they ruled over a large part of Rajasthan and Malwa. They also held Kannauj for some time. The Rajputs fought with each other endlessly in 11th and the 12th centuries. Taking advantage of this internecine quarrels, many local kings succeeded in making themselves independent. The next dynasty which I'm going to talk about is Pala dynasty. Gopala, who founded the Pala dynasty, did not have royal antecedents. He was elected by the people for his superior capabilities. During his reign, from 750 to 770, Gopala laid the foundations for the future greatness of this dynasty in Bengal. Dharmapala, his son, made the Pala kingdom a powerful force in northern Indian politics. He led a successful campaign against Kannauj. He was a great patron of Buddhism. He founded Vikramshila monastery, which became a great center of Buddhist learning. Dharmapala was succeeded by his son Devpala, who extended Pala control eastwards into Kamarupa, that is Assam. Devpala was also a great patron of Buddhism. He gifted 5 villages to the Buddhists. He also constructed many temples along with the monasteries in the Magad. According to the historian R.C. Majumdar, the reign of Dharmapala and Devpala constitute the most brilliant chapter in the history of Bengal. After Devpala, 5 rulers ruled the region insignificantly. The kingdom attained unprecedented glory when Mahipala ascended the throne in 988. Mahipala I was the most powerful ruler of the Pala dynasty. He is called the founder of the second Pala dynasty. The decline of the Pratiharas gave the Palas an opportunity to take a leading role in North Indian affairs. But he could not extend his domain beyond Banaras because of the impressive campaigns of the Chola king from the south, Rajendra Chola. Mahipala restored the old glories of the Palas. He constructed and repaired a large number of religious buildings at Banaras, Sarnath, and Nalanda. Students, I am repeating it again. There are many points which I am giving you for your extra information. It is not described in your textbook, and that is the reason I have written each and every point on the slide so that you can go through it also. Now next, talking about the Chauhan dynasties. The Chauhans or the Chahamanas, we can say. The Chauhans ruled between 956 and 1192 CE over the eastern parts of the present day Rajasthan, establishing the capital at Sakambari. This Rajput dynasty was founded by Simharaji, who was popularly known as the founder of city of Ajmer. In the beginning, its founder was said to be Ajay Raja, who was the chieftain under the Gurjara and Pratiharas. He declared himself as an independent ruler after the decline of the Gurjara and Pratiharas and founded the Chauhan dynasty. His capital was named after him as Ajay Meru or Ajmer. The last of Chauhan kings, Prithviraj Chauhan, was considered the greatest of all the Chauhan rulers. His court poet Chand Bardai wrote a long poem called Prithviraj Raso in his praise, which describes the king's valor and bravery. He fought 2 battles of Tarain with Muhammad Ghori in 1191 CE and 1192 CE respectively. In the first battle of Tarain, he defeated Muhammad Ghori. However, in the second, he was defeated and later killed. This battle is believed to be the turning point in the history of India. So students, who was Muhammad Ghori? Muhammad Ghori was the king of Ghor, a small kingdom in Afghanistan. He annexed the territories of Ghazni and ascended the throne in 1173 CE. He invaded India not only for its wealth but also for expanding his empire. So after defeating Prithviraj Chauhan in 1192 CE, he overran the entire Ganga Yamuna and left his general Kutubuddin Aibak to look after all the Indian territories. Talking about the second Turkish invasion, talking about Muhammad Ghazni. Muhammad of Ghazni ruled from 1997 to 130 CE. He had control over parts of Central Asia, Iran, and northwestern part of the subcontinent. He raided India almost every year, mainly the wealthy temples. He raided Somnath temple 17 times. He used the wealth to establish splendid capital city at Ghazni. He had a keen interest in knowing about the area conquered, thus appointed a scholar Al-Biruni, who wrote Kitab ul Hind in Arabic by consulting the Sanskrit scholars. Now talking about the next dynasty is the Rashtrakutas. The period they ruled was 8th to the 10th century CE. The founder of Rashtrakuta dynasty was Danti Durga, and the mother tongue of Rashtrakuta dynasty was Kannada. Initially, the Rashtrakutas were the subordinates of the Chalukya dynasty of Karnataka. Danti Durga, he was the Rashtrakuta chief who overthrew the king. He performed a ritual called as Hiranyagarbha, a golden worm, which is to be believed to give rebirth of the sacrifice as a Kshatriya by the help of the Brahmana. Danti Durga captured the Gurjara kingdom of Nandipuri, Malwa, and eastern Madhya Pradesh and Birar. He defeated Kirti Varmana II, the last Chalukya, and assumed the titles of Maharaja Dhiraja, Parameshwara, and Param Bhattaraha. He wanted a relationship with the Pallavas, so he gives his daughter to Nandi Varman II. He died in 758 CE, and his uncle, father's brother Krishna I ascended the throne. Krishna I ruled from 756 to 775 CE. He built Kailashnath temple at Ellora. His eldest son Govinda II succeeded him in 1775 CE. He defeated the eastern Chalukyas. Now the next successor of the throne was Dhruva, Govinda II's brother, who ruled from 780 to 794 CE. He defeated the Palas and annexed Kannauj. Another Rashtrakuta king, Amogvarsha, he ruled from 814 to 818 CE. He established his capital at Manyakheta or Malkhed in Maharashtra. He was a great scholar, a writer, a patron of art and architecture. He married his daughter to the Ganga prince. He wrote poetry in Kannada, and Kavi Raja Marga is quite famous from all those written by him. Krishna III was the last great ruler of the Rashtrakuta dynasty. He invaded the Chola kingdom along with his brother-in-law Buttunga. Kanchi and Tanjavur were captured in 1943 CE. He occupied Thondai Mandalam, Arcot, Chengalpattu and Vellore. 1949 CE, he defeated the Chola army of Raja Aditya in the Battle of Takolam. He built Krishneshwara temple at Rameshwaram. After Krishna III, Rashtrakuta dynasty declined because the successors were too weak, and there was a continuous wars between Pallavas and Pandyas and Cholas. The next dynasty is the Solanki dynasty. This dynasty ruled over the area of the present-day Gujarat. Their most important contribution were the temple architecture like the Dilwara temple at Mount Abu and the Sun temple at Modhera, Gujarat. The most powerful ruler of the Solanki dynasty was Siddharaj Jaisimha. Prominent dynasty of the South India plains were the Cholas dynasty. Chola were the contemporary of the Chalukyas, the Pallavas, the Pandyas and the Rashtrakutas. The Chola were earlier subordinate to the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram. Vijayalaya Chola was related to the ancient ruling family of Cholas. He belonged to Urayur and had captured the Kaveri Delta region from the Mutterayar in the middle of the 9th century. The new dynasty was founded by him, who ruled from 846 CE to 871 CE. Vijayalaya built the town of Thanjavur and made it the capital of his kingdom. He also built a temple for goddess Nishumba Basundini there. Raja I and Rajendra Chola, they conquered the neighboring kingdoms and annexed the Pandyan and Pallava territories that were to the south and the north of the Chola Empire. Raja I is considered the most important and powerful ruler. He also recognized the administration of the empire. Rajendra I continued his policies and raided the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka and the countries of the Southeast Asia. He developed a powerful navy for these expeditions. The Cholas made great contribution to arts and architecture. They built temples according to some basic plan that drew some distinction from the North Indian style. They placed the temples in an enclosed courtyard. The temples also had huge gateways called Gopurams. The image of the deity was placed inside the sanctum or sectorum. The best example of this temple are at Thanjavur and Gangaikoda Cholapuram. They were built by Raja and Rajendra Chola. They are architectural marvels. The Chola are also best known for their metal images and stone sculptures. However, the South Indian style of temple architecture is best represented by Pandyan rulers who ruled between the 7th to the 13th century AD. The Meenakshi temple at Madurai, built by the Pandyan rulers, though does not exist, was now known for its distinctive features. Around the Chola temples grew settlements of craftsmen and traders. A visual image of Nataraja made in bronze under the Chola dynasty in the 10th century AD has been found. It continues to be reproduced in metal, stone, and other materials right up to the present time. The Chola Nataraja is often said to be the supreme statement of Hindu art. The temples were cultural centers and the center of crafts production. They were given Devdana or land grants by the members of the royal family. These lands were provided with the irrigation system and were very productive. The produce of the land went into maintaining the bronze image of the temples and to the specialists who work at the temples. They very often lived near it. The settlements around the temples also consisted of garland makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians, dancers, and others. The South Indian temples were not only the places of worship but also served as the cultural center and a hub of economic and social activity. The Chola had become powerful on account of trade and agricultural prosperity. They used their money for initiating agricultural reforms. These reforms helped to build a strong agrarian landscape adorning their economy. Notice from the map of Chola kingdom how river Kaveri branches off into the several small channels before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. These channels renewed the soil of vast food plains year after year. The fertile soil were responsible for the agricultural prosperity of the region. Besides rice, many other crops were also cultivated. The existence of large number in the tanks of this period also point to the agricultural prosperity. The agricultural reforms spread far and wide, especially from the 5th and the 6th century AD onwards. During this period, forests were cleared in some regions to provide land for agriculture. This land was leveled and special agricultural tools were used. In the delta region, embankments were built to prevent floods. Canals were also constructed for irrigating the lands. With long period of sunshine, two agricultural crops in a year had become possible in some areas. A variety of methods to irrigate the fields were put into practice. This included canals in the delta region, wells in some areas, and tanks in others. This irrigation works required planning, organized labor and resource, maintenance of work, and decisions on the sharing of water. There were associations, officers appointed by the rulers and leaders of people living in the area who took an active interest in these matters. The trading association had also built extensive networks of irrigation which had enabled the agriculture to be carried out in the region. The agrarian reforms of the Chola considerably influenced irrigation in other countries of Southeast Asia. The trading association had closer ties with these countries. The enterprising farmers grew spices and sandalwoods for export to China and some other Southeast Asian countries. The remains of the tank belonging to some members of Manigramam guild have also been found. From China, they imported ceramic and glasswares. The Cholas had also sent an emissary to China in 1077 to further this trading contact. Some historians have found evidence of trade with Arabian ware from Cholas imported horses. The Chola state was a centralized, bureaucratized monarchy, maintained a large royal standing army which was recruited and controlled by the Chola rulers directly. It was administered in the following ways: local level Brahman village assembly Sabha and non-Brahmanical assembly Nadu or local peasant assembly Ur performed many administrative functions. Rich peasants of Velala caste exercised considerable control over affairs of Nadu under the supervision of central Chola government. Association of traders known as Nagaram occasionally performed administrative functions in town. Sabha looked after Brahmadeya. Sabha had separate committees to look after irrigation work, temple, charity, etc. Members of Sabha got elected through a lucky draw. Candidates could contest elections only if they had their own homes aged between 35 to 70 years, were well versed in Vedas and administrative matters, honest, etc. So, students, this was all for this lesson. The notes will be given in your WhatsApp group. Thank you so much.